when you were Secretary of Commerce, you became the liaison between the community, the community of business, and the government. And I think that was a very powerful, especially at that moment in history, it was a very powerful position to be in because it allowed business to feel that they were part of government, that they had a voice, that they were being represented. How do you think the private sector could step up and be a partner in responding to COVID-19?
Well, I think there's a huge role for the private sector. And I've always believed that, most business leaders are patriots and they want to do their part to be helpful, particularly when the country is in crisis. And, there's what's important is that there's clear mandates of what's needed, and there are clear avenues for collaboration and cooperation. And, today the role of the private sector is huge. The ability to help create vaccines. The kind of innovation that's going on is really extraordinary. Companies and organizations are stepping up. The government is stepping up. And what's exciting is the amount of collaboration that's happening. And that's so important. Therapeutics, PPE, the protective gear. The private sector is absolutely the provider of that kind of gear. I know there were some liquor producers that have turned their factories into creating sanitizers. That kind of ingenuity and creativity to meet a need, to meet a crisis, to meet a market demand, that's what the private sector can do. And I don't think it should be an us versus them, government versus business, but instead an opportunity to step up and work together.
As you said, you've been an entrepreneur. I was an entrepreneur. People that love to start things and really are problem solvers to a certain extent. That's what I think an entrepreneur, if you weren't finding a better way to do whatever it is you're doing, you wouldn't make any money. So you're solving a problem in a better way than what people have done before, or seeing a need that no one else has seen. With entrepreneurs, what do you think Congress could be doing to better support them? I know almost every small entrepreneur I knew was disappointed by the efforts coming out of Congress so far.
Well, I think there's a number of things. Your point of confidence and certainty. And what's important about certainty isn't that all the news is good. What's important for an entrepreneur is to understand the landscape they're dealing with, because business people know how to pivot and adjust. But what they can't do is try to deal with it when they don't understand what they're dealing with. And this virus and crisis has created a real body blow to entrepreneurs and small businesses. The PPP program is essential and extremely important to small business, but it has been confusing, hard to understand. The rules keep changing. There's sort of written rules and then there's unwritten rules. There's too much sort of innuendo and gossip about what's allowed and not allowed as opposed to clarity. And guidance has been all over the place. And that has been brutal for businesses. What we know is 75% of small businesses in America requested assistance through the Paycheck Protection Program, and only 38% have received it. And so there's something wrong when that's the situation. And okay, you can't blame any company who's in a crisis moment for saying, I need help, and the federal government's offering me help. I'm going to go try to get help. But the guidance needs to be clear. And that's, what is really important for a company. If don't qualify, I don't want to waste my time. I've got plenty of fires I've got to put out during this crisis. I don't need to be spending time on something I'm not qualified for. If I am qualified, how do I get access? And guidance needs to be clear. And that's been a real problem. And then the other challenge is some preconditions in the law have made it impossible for some. I've read of some in businesses who say, look, I can't take that money. It doesn't fit with the way I operate. And so, okay, that's fine. But, the government needs to understand that. So Congress needs to look at what they've done to date, analyze what's worked and what's not worked, but make sure if they're going to do more, it's clear what is the intentions and that the rules and guidance that's put out is clear from the beginning.